listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all of these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay aligned with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
Yeah, buddy. Razor.
Yes, sir.
How you feeling, good sir?
I'm feeling good, man. Like the person that we have coming in on here, Charles. Like I'm glad to have him. Right? It's just certain shows that I think is going to enlighten the community in a different aspect because of the way the conversation is going to develop. So I'm feeling good about what's going to happen in this next hour.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, man. I am HO family. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that. We sure do. So tell a friend, I am HO on all your social medias. I am HO Talk Show, that is. Sir Charles, Big Razor, in the booth, in the building. Man, you know, as we always do about this time, you know, Razor, we, like we say, regardless of the good or bad that's surrounding us, we got the job to do. Yeah. When these lights come on in this booth, the people expect to hear a good word, right? They you know, expect to be entertained a little bit. So, you know, definitely want to be cognizant and show respect to the loss of life that we've experienced as a city, as a community here recently over the weekend, man, between the plane crash, between the senseless violence on just last night. prayers and, continued blessings to the families. And as a community, again, that is why we are here on your nonprofit radio station, community-based radio, IMHO, to have these discussions, not to just talk and laugh and have fun and entertain, but to inform and to know that we are still here with each other, still here for each other. And we got people that we love to bring in here, that we love to celebrate, because these are the boots on the ground. Like, we're here to sort of moderate, to sort of manage the show, but we don't act like that we know it all. We'll give our humble opinions.
Yeah, you forgot one thing, Charles.
What
in your description that you always
that
say,
you know it all?
Honest, of course. I'm right twice on Sundays. But honest conversation.
Right,
you know what I'm
right.
saying? And honest conversation means that just because I have an opinion doesn't mean that I can't be checked with facts.
Spot on.
You know what I'm saying? And that's why IMHO has lasted as long as it has.
That's right. That's right, my man. And so, without further ado, one of the good folks, as Reza has said, that we have in with us to help us kick off this show today is none other than the good Dr. Ben Allen of the Equity Center here in Charlottesville. Ben, man, how are you this Sunday afternoon?
Good. I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate y'all for having me this morning.
Man, as always, first, happy 2025 to you.
Yeah.
2025, yet another new year. It's new beginnings, and yet it's new challenges. But you still got your hand on the plow, man. Like, you still staying faithful to the work. We appreciate you.
Well, it's like you said, we have to. I think, I was at an event yesterday, and one of the things we were talking about is, like, despite the challenges and the hurdles that we all are going to face this year and in the upcoming years, that this work is localized and that we can, as a community, still take care of our own, and as a community still continue the work. And so I appreciate y'all for giving me this space this morning, and continuing y'all for always providing space for this community to have those honest discussions.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, man. Much appreciated, and much obliged as well. So, so we're going to get into, folks, so stay tuned. I'm thinking like second half of the interview, the second hour where we can get into the work and sort of what we're facing right now as a community on how we keep banding together and keep looking out for each other when it comes to making sure things are equitable, making sure that the spaces stay diverse, and to make sure that everybody who wants to be feels included.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's at stake right now, politically. And so for those who don't believe in voting and all that stuff, like, here's why it matters.
Yeah.
And so, so for those that don't know, Ben is the executive director over at the Equity Center here. And so first, though, the main initiative that he's in for, we want to kick it off with, is the Community Safety Community Dialogue. And you are invited Tuesday, January 28th, 5:30 to 7 at Burley Middle School over on 901 Rose Hill Drive. It will be a community member open and collaborative dialogue on safety in the Charlottesville Albemarle region. It'll be a small group style discussion that will hold space for community members to share their input, ask questions, and engage with others around community safety. And check this out, Reza. Food, child care, Spanish, and Dari translations will be provided. I don't want to hear no excuses.
I need.
I don't want to hear no excuses for not being there. Food, child care, and language translations.
Yeah, Ben do it right.
That's right. Will be provided.
Look, I have a great team that coordinates stuff like that, and I know we're going to talk about this in the second half in terms of DEI. We talk about equity.
Yeah,
that's equity.
Absolutely.
And I think people get it real twisted.
Yeah.
When you think about it, how do people come to an event? What are the barriers for getting them to an event? I got to take care of my child. Well, I also need to eat.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't know the language. So there's three things.
That's right.
That just breaks down the barrier so you can have a equal playing field and equal voice.
That's right.
So we're gonna get to that later. But it's sometimes just real as simple as that.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
And this flyer is on our page, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to see there and see how you can take the survey and all this and learn more about the implementation groups and all that Ben is going to describe for us here going into it. So, man, to kick off, man, like, kind of give us the background, because this community safety community dialogue, man, again, sort of being here this morning following, another tragic incident in our community. It doesn't bring solace to families and stuff, to try to, for us to constantly say things like, well, it's never going to be like 0% because people have those conversations. Like we only can do the work, make it as best as we can. It's never going to be 0% crime rate, right? But that definitely doesn't bring solace to a family of a lost one, right? So so just kind of take us through the the lead up to this idea and the need of having this community dialogue. What it's about.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that we're committed to at the Equity Center is to make sure that we have two-way communication, right? And that we're holding space for people to come and have conversations about the topics of this area. So these community dialogues, we're starting to do them once a quarter. There'll be different topics, and given some of the work that we've been involved in over the past couple of years, it's very timely, as you said, even as recent as 8 hours ago, another loss of life in our community, to be able to continue these conversations about how do we get the stakeholders in the room at the same time and to talk about how do we prevent this. It's wild as we have these conversations with other communities, they always look at us and like, oh, you don't have a problem. You don't have a gun violence problem. But I always say, tell that to the family who's just lost their brother, their uncle, their cousin. Tell that to them. And you can't, because like you said, it's important. And this town is so small that it's so connected. So this dialogue is to really bring together service providers, community members, and to look at how do we provide holistic and timely care to individuals so that there's an alternate path for this violence, right? Like, how do we intervene and how do we ensure that people have it? And the thing that I always point out is, like, it's one thing to provide the care, but I know both of y'all are in this space. Once you provide someone support, how is it continued? Because it's not like it's going to just change in one day. It takes a while to change a mindset, to change habits, right? So how do we ensure that we're wrapping around our community members in that way? And so this dialogue is going to provide people in small group discussions. There's going to be a facilitator and a note taker each group to be able to have those conversations and to have those honest conversations, to be able to look at where we're at, what's working and what's not, how we're going to get better together.
Can I, hey, Charles?
Yes, sir.
Well, as we have this conversation, I want to ask the permission of you two, as well as the family listening, for me to play villain for a little bit,
Careful.
And no, I have to, because if I don't play villain, then we won't understand the stakeholders' position for not moving forward, right? If I jump in this space real quick, it will make people have emotion and have an outcry of like, wait a minute, what does he mean? What is he saying? As opposed to if I'm a 60, 70-year-old white man in a blue suit with a red tie, and then people are afraid to say what they really feel and then go back to their respective corners. So that being said, I want to ask, why are we so outraged with gun violence when we lose more people to drugs than we do guns? Like here in Charlottesville, I think the percentage of drug death is 1.56. For guns, it's 0.08 or 0.8 or something like that, right? It's almost half. But the outrage comes, death is death at the end of the day, right? But we have more of an outrage and a lot more tears when it comes to gun violence, as opposed to, wait a minute, hold on for a minute, because I got a point. I studied you, so I got a point here. Now, gun violence is only considered gun violence when there's a crime. But when somebody says that I'm exercising my Second Amendment to keep the community safe, that still doesn't make the person any less dead. So my two questions is, one, why do we look at gun violence the way that we do when we don't look at it as drugs? We got cops running around with Narcan, hitting people in the chest that overdose. And if I'm exercising my Second Amendment right, even if I'm in the middle of the night and it might not be the best situations, how am I in the wrong?
The first, that's an excellent question. Always appreciate your question.
Yeah. People say they do, but then I get the hate mail.
And then they go home and be like, really though, the first thing I'll say to that is we don't have to have selective outrage. Like we can be equally upset at both of those instances. And I think that the resources that we have in this community should be provided enough to address both the issue around substance abuse as well as the issues around gun violence. When we talk about gun violence, we talk about it as a public health issue, right? That it's not, a lot of people only have outrage when you get to the climax point of there's a shots fired or there's someone that actually is injured. But they don't understand all the activity and all the things that are happening up until that point. Sometimes it may have to do with substance abuse or drugs. Sometimes it may have to do with a lack of an outlet or a lack of mental health. All of those things are precursors to what happens when we get to gun violence. And so I think we can't just have tunnel vision and just look at that crisis point, because that's just an inflection in time, that there's weeks, months prior to that, that there's so much things that are happening. I think also there's other thing too, just around, to kind of go down a little bit around substance abuse. I think it's a not a stipulation, a stereotype we have that substance abuse is something an individual can control, that people stereotype and say, oh, that person can just get better and they have to have that individual responsibility. When it's gun violence, it's something that impacts the whole area because of how physical it is, of how in your face it is. And so I think we have to get and change people's mindsets that it's an issue too. And it's not just someone, can change on their individual basis, right? There's a reason why there's a diagnosis that people get for it. And so we have to change that stipulation, that perception of it.
Okay.
Yeah. And Razor, like, I also feel like that one gets sort of romanticized more, so to speak. I mean, it's probably not the best adjective, but it's a matter of it's been spot on, but to your point, the way people respond the way that they do.
Yeah.
Even from my experience, I feel like that the drug use or drug abuse and death is usually, of course, there's tragic situations you never see coming. It's usually something that you've been dealing with for a while. Like you've been with this person, you've been seeing this coming, you've been trying to get them help, things like that, so it's more of a progression versus majority of the time, again, like withstanding that there's always, like ones that may happen spur of the moment, but it's like with the gun violence, that is sometimes something where it's like it happened, like what, that just happened, right?
Yeah.
That happened to him last night. You know what I mean? Like like you don't see it coming usually.
Yeah.
You follow what I'm saying? I mean, and of course when people are in, like except for when people are living lifestyles or whatnot, of course that you'd be like, hey man, you're gonna be dead or in jail,
right?
Things like that happen. Of course, that's a lead up as well. Okay. But I think people just approach the two things in a different manner, is how I would answer your question. It doesn't mean that one is more substantial than the other. I think it's just more about the way that the way that the deaths happen.
Does it make sense though for us to be able to decipher a level of outrage when it comes to, like what you said? Let's say, for instance, it has nothing to do with mental instability, has nothing to do with drugs. Let's say it's at its core of America, where gun violence, not the situation last night, because I know nothing of it. So please, nobody think that we're talking about that. But in general, let's say it has, with these younger kids, it has to do with money or disrespect. Two things that we teach from the beginning of time: respect your elders, right? And get out here and make a living for yourself. Now, unfortunately, and I'm not coming against the city of Charlottesville, the government or whatnot, it seems like a lot of times they've forgotten what it's like to be a child and have things for children to do. Like once you get a position, it's like they don't understand that they have kids too that need things to do, right? You don't need to be told to understand. Or you just live in a different
space. You live in a different space where you don't realize not everybody has access that you have.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think those have been our excuses, right? Because regardless if a child can speak whatever language, English or anything else, they need something to occupy their mind, especially as they're developing, different things. The easy thing has been to buy video games, buy Call of Duty, buy all these games that have reset buttons after somebody gets killed or murder or whatever, right? And then let that raise your children.
Right.
So then when that child grows up to where they're looking you in your eyes and they've developed what they feel their place in the world should be, it's hard to then cry foul when the child that you have let develop under this type of atmosphere goes out and takes that atmosphere and puts it in your atmosphere.
So I think that's a great segue to talking about the stakeholders, because you remember we had Chief Conscious in here with us not long ago, and one thing
had city manager and stuff here too.
We had everybody.
We had everybody. So I'm just saying,
but in particular though, like what I'm saying is with the chief, one thing that he said in particular that stuck in my mind is how he compared stakeholders in community safety being like a soccer team, and he compared the police to being the goalie. And to which he said that there's a lot of players that that crime goes through before it gets to the goalie, or you know, and he said the goalie has one job, right? Is to stop the ball, it's stop it, right? Like that's your only job. So you know, and he likened that to, you know, like if you break the law, then we have to impose the penalty for that, you know, like for that crime, right?
Right.
And you can't like necessarily look at the police of like, oh, well, you should have been the therapist, or you should have been this and that. They're like, that's not our job. There's other players where it's a job. So talk to us about the stakeholders that are a part of this dialogue that's happening on Tuesday, so folks know sort of the fullness of what's going on.
Yeah, and to tie it back to what Razor was getting to with I don't think it's has ever been as hard to be a kid as it is today.
Absolutely.
I think it's increased. The pressures have increasingly, even like, you know, I'm 40 years old, right? Like I was in high school 20 years ago. The academic pressures, the social pressures, and everything is instantly in your face all the time, right? The way that you remember, like you would go to school and people would say something, you couldn't see them until the next day.
Right.
Like now it's all on social media and everything. And so you talk about those like core values that we know with youth of like respect, how their peers influence, it's in their face all the time. And then you kind of see everything going around your world. Like I think we sometimes live in a bubble because we didn't have access to even 24-hour news all the time. Right. But this is always on. So it is incredibly hard to be a kid these days, no matter who you are. I think the thing that we have to get to when we think of the stakeholders that'll be there with like service providers and opportunities, there is one thing, the worst thing for a kid is to have nothing to do.
That's right.
And to have nothing to do with negative influences. There are so many opportunities in this community in terms of camps, resources, the school systems, the activities that you can do, the credentials that you can get before you even come out of high school, where you don't even necessarily need a 4-year degree because you can stack credentials in cybersecurity or in computer science before you leave. You can go to the military. You can get all of that stuff. And we have to figure out a way to say, here's the resource, here's the people that need it.
Right.
What are the barriers that are stopping our kids from taking it?
You know what I think?
Onto it.
Without cutting you off, you know what I think?
What is it?
Honest to goodness. And a lot of the things that are here in Charlottesville, the opportunities are, and everybody, please, just like I told you, I was playing the villain from this, are presented in a very white way so that the children that are out here don't feel inclusive. Now, I know coming up through school, I didn't have a black teacher. I had one my entire 12 years, right? So when you take people that are looking to help with education, but they're human beings and their understanding goes to the people that they understand. So then you have children who might come from a different background. And it's kind of confusing to these children, in my humble opinion, where the world copies what our community does. But when it comes time to give it back and give us opportunity, there's a disconnect. And these kids have to accept that, okay, this is what success looks like. This is what talking proper looks like. Like if I talk the way we talk in my community, I'm a country boy, but let's just say, for instance, if I was a hood kid, so to speak, right? And I talk this way, you're telling me that my way of talking is uneducated because it doesn't align with your 4-year institution way of speaking, which is really based off of something that's across the pond over in England.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So how is it that is it administered over here, but you drag me from my country over here and now mine is insufficient, even though everything that you're telling me is that my community had part in the cultivation of farming, in the building of these stoplights and all these things, George Washington, everything that we talk about, right? We talk about in the blink of an eye to let me know that I'm still insufficient if I'm myself, but I'm more accepted if I'm more you. How can I not be confused, which turns to anger? Because everybody I know, when they start being not understood, anger is the first thing that comes about. We don't need no counselors to tell us that this is basic information. And I think that, and we got people that come in here and counsel, you my boy, and I'm not talking about you, but when it comes to counselors,
you always got a disclaimer.
And when it comes to counselors, this is just another way to make money.
So that's very multi-layered and multifaceted. Can I just?
Yeah,
I'm gonna chime in.
I'm playing villain.
I'm gonna let Ben.
You know what I'm saying?
You ain't got to excuse yourself.
Yeah, I have to. You ain't the one that got to go out here and hear this stuff. You know what I'm saying? So,
Nah, but to me, man, it's like that's so multi-layered and multifaceted to where a lot of it for my people, me being a black man in America, you know, based on what everything you just said, a lot of times it's excuses as well. Now, because here's the thing. Here's the thing is and we know how to make a good excuse.
Yeah.
Like when we don't want to do something.
Because we go into survival.
Yeah.
Or when I mean you can say that, like, but I feel like sometimes we make excuse like when we don't want to take onus on something.
Name a
like,
time when black people have been in survival.
No, I feel you. I'm not like you go in a different direction with it.
Yeah.
Like what I'm saying is that like we understand that there's white supremacy, and that's at the crux and the core of what the problem is when it comes to how we socialize and how some people feel out of place and all of that. Whether it's you getting a job or whether you're trying to sign up for Parks and Rec and you feel like somebody's looking at you wrong. Like we all get that there is a structural racism and discrimination that's in place, right? But that does not negate the fact that you still have people out here like Dr. Allen and team that are making resources available, and the resources are available, making sure that folks know that you know that these are here. Now, once that's done, and once it look, because remember, ignorance is bliss, Razor. And we got to start being honest with ourselves and with our people. That then once you know that something is available to you, you can keep using, you know, like the Karen that works in the office as an excuse to why you ain't going and getting it. But it's there, it's available.
Is there black supremacy, Dr. Allen?
Oh, there's classism for sure. I mean, we can.
No. Is there black supremacy?
In what way?
Like say on the basketball court, out on the football field. Like, I mean, I'm playing villain here for a second, y'all. So
well, let me go back to the piece about the excuse, because everything you mentioned in terms of, you know, how things are packaged, how they're presented to certain students, certain demographics. Yes, they are steeped in a white supremacist culture, right? That is how it is established. But he used a key word, and that's excuse, right? We're not like, we have to think about, I know we're at a place now where people are saying there is no systemic racism, right? That's really what we're battling. We know that it is because we've seen it, we've lived it. It's always going to be there. And despite how many people in this town are working against it, there's always going to be those obstacles and those people that believe you'll never be able to shift it. But when you have someone that's presenting you an opportunity, and they're presenting it to you as a person of color, and the opportunity is putting in front of you models of excellence where the people are computer scientists, where they're doctors. A lot of these programs and towns are doing that. Then that's where we have to have, how do we get the kid to take the opportunity, right? How do we get to support them? Because like what Charles said, at the end of the day, you can be mad about it. You can be like, oh, I may have to shift the way I talk or the way I dress or something like that. But you're the one that's going to lose out on it. The other, they're going to be like, look, I told you so. I told you that person was going to make it. When we mentor kids, and I talk to kids all the time, I'm like, you know, you getting angry, I understand we're going to see if we can find an outlet. That's just going to give them more energy, more fodder to say like, yeah, I told you he shouldn't have been in that program, or I told you he or she didn't belong. And I think that's where, as a community, we have to ensure that we have, every kid has an opportunity for excellence. Every kid has the support to do it, no matter what they look like and no matter where they come from. And I keep going back to, like, there is enough people in this town doing this and doing it, starting with kids in kindergarten, right? We just have to ensure that we're supporting them going all the way through, because the only way that we're going to do it is if we take care of our own.
Okay.
Yeah. And Razor, let's take a break and get back to more of the DI discussion. I want to make sure that Dr. Allen closes out on his thoughts though for Tuesday.
Okay.
Like, what are we missing from this dialogue? Because I don't think that you ever got to you know, as far as like what to expect, who to expect, as far as the resources that's going to be there Tuesday. You know, folks know they can come and they're welcome. You got food, you got childcare, you have translators for those who may just be joining us, didn't hear that part. This Tuesday, 5:30 at Burley Middle School, community conversation on community safety. Because you know, you got folks that just, you know, I mean, let's be honest, like we have a disdain, we have a distrust for whether it's UVA, whether it's police, right? The list goes on and on. It's like,
all black people.
Yeah, for each other, right? So so kind of give that sales pitch, right? You know, for Tuesday.
Yeah, why should they come?
Come up.
Look, all those things are always gonna be true, but we can either stay at home and talk amongst ourselves and be upset and be frustrated, or like, to me, part of holding this space and holding these types of events is so that you can come and have that actual interaction. Whatever your frustration is, whatever your lived experience is, like, you can have that space to do it in a way that's facilitated, right? There's a reason why such a conversation that's sensitive is not going to be like, hey, here's a whole group, everyone start talking. We've all been in those. It doesn't work.
Right.
So we do smaller breakout sessions. So people, feel encouraged to speak, because some people don't even feel like, my voice doesn't even matter. I'm not going to go and talk because I'm just going to be overshadowed. So you do that and you design it so people can see that. And so that's my sales pitch, is like, if you are frustrated, if you know something that's worked, you have ideas, you want to hear feedback, then that's where you come and have these conversations. Because if we don't, then it's all of us going to be discharged and talking amongst our own circles and cliques and being frustrated at each other without actually knowing the details and how other people speak. It's very different to talk to people online or talk to them like after you see it, as opposed to you're sitting across the table with them breaking bread.
That's right.
So,
spot on, man. Couldn't say it better myself. Dr. Ben Allen, that is this Tuesday at 5:30 over at Burley Middle School, the community safety community dialogue. And so we're going to take a quick break and we're going to get back and we're going to, tap Mr. Allen's brain a little bit about just what we're facing right now when it comes to sort of, everything DEI and it being under threat, but how we continue the work that has been so valuable to so many in our community. So, yes, indeed, it is Sir Charles, it is Reza, it is Miss Max, it is IMHO Talk Show. Be right back, y'all.
HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Reza.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Reza.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, Black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More Black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue, especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay aligned with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
IMHO Talk Show. You know what it is. Sir Charles.
Max.
Razor.
And we are here with none other than the good Dr. Ben Allen of the Equity Center here in town. We're having a good conversation. And, you know, before we let him go, we definitely wanted to get his take, you know, being that he is executive director of making things equitable here in the Charlottesville area. You know, we already talked about one more reminder for y'all, the Community Safety Community Dialogue this Tuesday. It's big. It's for everybody at Burley Middle School, 5:30. And as we said, there will be food, child care, Spanish, and Dari translations provided for the Charlottesville and Albemarle region. So, Dr. Allen, like, where do we even start, man? I guess, since you all do such good work, I think it's, I think it behooves us to just give you the floor for a second to let folks know, just give a quick overview of that office that you are head of, what it is you do, and now what the changes in our federal government look like in the face of that work.
Absolutely. So we technically run community partnerships for the University of Virginia. About 5 years ago, the Equity Center was created at the advocacy of community leaders, some university faculty and staff, to see how the university could be a better partner to the local community. And with several focus areas that was driven from a community resource, a community survey that said, hey, here are the areas that we want the university to step in and actually be a part of the solution. And so in that, going to this piece about equity, when I talk about this work, and I could talk about it across the aisle, I talk about it at a very basic level. We're looking at how do we get people housing with our affordable housing initiative. We look at college and career readiness. How do we provide youth with opportunities? On March 11th, we're collaborating with Piedmont Virginia Community College and Albemarle County Schools that invites every senior in this area from Madison, Orange, Louisa to PVCC, where they're going to have providers from the military, from local jobs, from all different types of stuff to provide that to youth opportunities, right? I don't care what you look like. I don't care where you come from. That's an opportunity, right? Right. The equity piece there is holding that space, right? Providing the transportation to the systems, to the school systems, making sure that they have a space for them to come to, those kind of things. All of that's equity. And I think people get it twisted. We go and get in the next piece of it. We work with our partners that I know y'all talked to with for is pipelines and pathways. That's workforce development. Again, we're trying to get people into jobs that are at the University of Virginia that maybe have some barriers to people getting entry to it. A barrier is something as simple as like, I may not have a computer that I can fill out an application on. Okay, we're going to work with you. We're also, everyone wants to talk about merit. We're also going to work with you to prepare you for a job interview. We're going to work with you to update your resume so that you can be merit-based, because people have skills, they have talents, and they may just not know how to articulate it to an employer, right? Because they were never trained to. So we're providing that.
And all these things are still equity.
Right. All this is equity, right? We look at public health. I know y'all have talked to Miss Jackie Martin and some of the work that she's doing over there in Fifeville, right? Okay, I can't even get to the health system. So how did this health system come to me? So there's a mobile unit, right? On Tuesdays, they're providing services at Abundant Life Ministries where people can come get their get vaccinations, get food if they're food insecure. And so it's breaking down those barriers that's simple as a distance that I can't get to the health system. So we're going to come to you to your community. So we talk about all these things of like, it takes people to have those relationships and then an infrastructure necessary for them to be sustainable and get timely things. And so that's the work that we lead. And I think I'll get into this later if we have time for it. There's a whole research aspect of it too, that we look at, okay, we know what the problems are because we see it. We have family members that live it.
Right.
But how do we get policymakers? How do we get stakeholders in our community to see it in a holistic way? So we have data tools worth the county and the city about here is this almost state of the region. We have the state of the region of gun violence in our community. What are the actual issues in terms of shots fired, in terms of how many homicides there's been over the past couple of years? And all that stuff is publicly available, because if you've ever tried to see, hey, what is the problem? I know they got AI and all that kind of stuff now, but it's not the same. When you go and look for all these things, it's in many different websites. It's in many different databases. The data is not clean. And so we have a team of individuals that goes and packages that so we can even talk the same language when we're saying, like, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And so that's the work that we're committed to. And regardless of what happens at the federal level, that's work that we're going to continue to keep doing.
Gotcha. Now you say that, but that's where the rubber meets the road, right? Like, what are we facing when it comes to the fact of like the threat of the resources being shut down, the threat that anything that resembles anything DEI being illegal, right? Like, what are we doing to face that? And I appreciate what you said too about how DEI serves a broad range of demographics. And like, so maybe even touch on like, how do we inform people better of that? Like, what are we or what are people missing when they think that DEI is just for people of color, right? And that's or gay people, right? That's all. It's when the national conversation, that's what it seems like. Conservatives or Trumpers, like they respond as if it's a direct impact or it's a direct attack on white America.
Well, I think people look at it as like, oh, because that demographic or that group is getting something, then I'm losing something. And we all know that's not the case. It's not a zero-sum game. It doesn't work like that. And it seems to me that the only time people get upset about it is when it's something around race, right? We don't see the outrage around anything else, whether it's socioeconomics or whether it's anything else. It really seems to be the most thing that people is around race. And so
can I get, I just want to say, can you speak to that very specifically? Because you pointed out some things during the break that I think our listening audience needs to hear in terms of demographics, the specific service received by which group, and how that is still equity.
Yeah, absolutely. And so before I went to UVA, I mean, my training, what I went to school for, and really my passion is I'm a K-12 educator, right? So was at the high school level as well as in elementary school. And one of the things that we see around equity is around special education services, around reading services. And so if you're listening and you yourself or anyone that you know within your family community that has received services around reading or special education, that's equity. Because literally at the base of what we're saying is like, here's a class of 20 kids. There is a young person in there that cannot be successful in that class unless we give them some support. So it might be a little extra time to do things. It might be a person that comes in and works with them, whatever they have in their IEP or in their 504 plan. It might be something that they're working with their families on. All of that's equity. And then from my experience, especially working in this community, special education doesn't matter. When your kid needs special education services, it doesn't matter if they're Black, it doesn't matter if they're white, it doesn't matter if they're poor, or if they're an affluent family.
Right.
That diagnosis that they have is something that needs to be supported. And so when we talk about DEI, that is equity, right? When we talk about inclusion, how do we make sure that that child and that family feels included in all the services? The one thing I'll say there is something as simple as an assembly. in an elementary school. There are some students with the noise and all the different stimulation. It's a lot for them. So for them to have inclusive, exclusive experience in that programming, there are things that you can put in place to do that, right? And again, that is something that is good for anyone. Doesn't matter what you look like. And so I always go to those examples to show that people that it's not what you think it is. Like it's not that deep. And it's increasingly something that I just wish people would really look at what they're upset about. What is that's what I'm trying to get at. Like, what are people really so upset about that they think that they're losing out on something?
I mean, can I say it? Because you're a professional and, you know, and you got a job to protect, but they're protecting white supremacy. But, you know, is anybody here going to disagree with that? It's like anything that challenges white supremacy, which means white male dominant society and control, that's a threat. And people will vote against their own self-interest to maintain white supremacy. You know, but I also wanted you to touch base on, like, how do we, like, where's the hope in continuing this work in the face of the threat of it being illegal?
The hope, we have to keep in mind, I think we, over the past maybe decade or so, maybe a little bit more than a decade, we've enjoyed this sort of rhetoric at the national and even state level that DEI is what we want to do. Like we have our leaders who are talking about it. We're getting services for stuff like that. But we have to look at the long history of this country, that the people that came before us that did this work, it was illegal. It was not even an opportunity. And even when I think about, like, how do we teach people? One of the things I saw that came out yesterday is, you know, when you go to basic training in the Air Force or in any armed service, they do different, like, trainings on different groups. In the Air Force, one of the things they cut is about the Tuskegee Airmen.
That's right. That
they took it out of the training videos for new recruits to come in. And so it is up to us, people like us, to, you know, I call it like abolitionist teaching, right? Before it was allowed, we still taught our history, right? And there's enough resource out here that you can supplement whatever your child is getting in school, that you can be able to do that. There's enough groups outside of it to be able to do it. A lot of the things that we say is illegal, it's more of like the funding that comes from it. And so we have to look at diversifying our funding streams and looking at private philanthropy. And I always put the call out to the resources in this community for individuals who are very progressive or articulate that they are progressive.
That's right.
That there are funding opportunities to provide services to some of these nonprofits and to some of these individuals who are doing this work. Like that is the way that folks can help, right? And so even going back to that Tuskegee Airmen piece is the frustrating piece with that. There's everyone wants to talk about merit. If you look at what the Tuskegee Airmen did, now I've been in the military for 14 years, right? And it's always merit. It's always how good you can do. They were the baddest pilots at the time.
Say so.
Not even the pilots. Think about all the support staff, the nurses, the people that provided their training, all that stuff. They were all Black too, because it was segregated. They were the best at a time when the country hated them the most. And I think that's the thing, going back to the first half of this, when we were talking about excuses, like we don't get afforded excuses. We always have to be better. We always have to show that we're better.
Right.
And the thing is that we can do that, right? Because we've done it before.
So I do wonder, though, is it as simple as continuing your programming as is, you know, kind of unchanged if you seek alternate, you know, funding resources? Because I'm thinking the Equity Center is under the University of Virginia, right? Which is a state institution, right?
Yes.
Is it that simple? Like, is your department having conversations with the president and the powers that be to see where their mindset is as far as, you know, continuing with the program as is? And then, you know, one can't help but to think about the pressure that the federal government will be putting on people to, despite finding these other resources, the financial resources, the pressure they might put on them to make some changes.
Absolutely.
Which unfortunately is something that we as individuals who, you know, we can talk all day long and we can make good sense out of stuff all day long, but how much power do we actually have, you know, to enforce the type of things that we're advocating for? So,
and I will say to the first part of that is that, you know, I do feel fortunate that we have senior leadership at the university that is supportive of this work, is staying the course. But at the end of the day, there's only so many things we can control.
Right.
And I always say we can continue to do this work for as long as we can under the umbrella that we that we're currently in. But I go back to the point is like there's other spaces to do this work, right? And it may be a lot harder. There may be barriers, but we're going to still continue to do it. Right now, as we look at the landscape at the federal level, it's exhausting. We're only a week in. It hasn't even gone to what that's going to look at the state. But we go back to what we were talking about offline is like, this is why elections matter. This is why state elections matter. And we have a pretty critical race coming up. And so I think people need to really, internalize and look at their local community and maybe block out the national noise, right? And look at their local community and see what kind of community do we want for ourselves. And like you said, man, at the end of the day, like I can't predict it. None of us can. We can't control it, but I think we can still continue to do the work as long as hard as we can.
And that's spot on, because Max, because I heard you say federal multiple times, but that's why we tell people your local elections matter so much, right? Because the federal sort of does what it does, but even that has its boundaries, right? And especially this federal government is looking to give states their rights. Like they're essentially trying to go pre-United States and go back to a confederacy where the states make their own decisions and fund all their own stuff. So again, that local and your state elections are just as, if not more important. Right.
That's very true.
And that also feeds Max and Reza into how we, a lot of times we talk about how we as a people have even feel duped and feel used by a particular political party. But to Ben's point, like, that's why it's so important for us to realize that, there's like, we are in a commonwealth, right? Taxes serve a purpose and all that good stuff. So there's public services that we should be able to take advantage of. But like that man just said, we at some point we got to be ready to be independent too. It's right. And like whether that's reform to different laws or regulating certain things or whatever the case is, it's like just because you can get, just because there's good services they get federally or state provided for us, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be preparing ourselves independently. That doesn't mean our community shouldn't have locally owned businesses. You know what I mean? All that stuff. So and also what Ben said, like, I think that's a dinner table conversation. Like we just got to get more serious about teaching things that we can't expect the school systems to teach.
Charles, it's much more than a dinner table conversation, because it's an ideology, it's a belief system, if you will. And while more and more of our minority population are more informed and more motivated to organize and more understanding of how things are, institutions are structured or designed to work against them, they are just as much as lackadaisical about doing anything about it. It is much easier to figure out how to tread these waters and how to survive than it is to to organize and make some change.
Facts.
And so that's the difficult part out of it. Quite honestly.
But how many times we gonna get beat over the head or killed by police or be threatened by white supremacy, like to take our well-being away before we get serious about that?
That's a scary answer.
To
be honest with you. And I don't mean to sound like dismal and not be optimistic about it, but I'm also being a realist, and I understand, we see as much work is being done, and this guy here is talking about some great work that he and his organization is doing. But as wonderful as all of that is, it takes the boots on the ground. It takes your community members. It takes, it takes all of us to really organize against all of this. And that's the part that is missing, and we'll talk about it on the radio, and we'll talk about it, at work, or you talk about it in our homes, but sometimes it doesn't go much further than just talking about it. In most cases, it doesn't go much further than just talking about it. And I just say that to say that we need to get to work. Like, you can't, as bad as things seem with this, or look like they're going to get with this new administration and how it's going to impact us and those that we care about, the only hope that you can really have is in what you and those around you, your allies, can do. That's the only hope that you really, really have. You can't look to the federal government and things like that to ensure your own, safety, security, destiny, prosperity, all those different things. You have to get to work for yourself.
Well said. Well said. Well, Dr. Allen, thank you, good sir. Please keep up the great work. And just, as we let you go, just any last words, any closing reminders for the listeners?
No, I appreciate y'all for having me this morning. Again, Tuesday on January 28th from 5:30 to 7, we'll be having that community dialogue. And then to the second piece of this, I hope folks were listening to what Ms. Max was saying in terms of there's some realism to this. I'm an optimist that I think that there's some strength here that we have locally that we can continue this work. I think that hopefully there's some individuals that won't be as passive and that we can continue this together because I don't know, there's only certain things that we can control, but I think that if we continue to take care of our own, we continue to the work that we're doing, regardless of what the title of the organization is. I think we have to do that. And I think people have to have some individual responsibility in this, but I appreciate y'all really for having me and talking about these two important topics. And hopefully be back soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Take care.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue, especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay aligned with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
In my humble opinion, I am HO Talk Show,
Yes,
Sir
sir.
Charles.
Miss Max.
And we are here still standing, ladies and gentlemen, middle of the show. Thank y'all for joining us and sticking with us. We are joined right about now with the brother, good brother, my man for wow, Southern Albemarle roots
Yes,
with
sir.
me. We both know a little bit about Esmond, Virginia.
Oh yeah, that's some deep roots.
That's right. My man Scott Hamler of 4Z Marketing. My man wears so many hats, but I can bet that you have come across more than one graphic or media design or marketing campaign that this brother is behind.
You might have seen my stuff a little bit. You might see my stuff a little bit. You may not see me, but you see what I do.
That's right. That's right, man. Yeah, how you feeling today, brother?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm blessed. I'm happy to be here. Thank y'all for having me here today.
Yes,
I listen to the show, so it's cool to be part of it.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, man. So we have you here. For those that don't know, you are a part of the TOMTOM Foundation and Festival team. In particular, leading up community partnerships, right?
Yeah, I won't say leading, but I'm part of the foundation. I'm part of the board, the advisory board. Got involved with it I think like 2 years ago at this point. So I dug what they were doing with the festival. You know, like you said, my family's been in the area since before we can count. And so I've grown up here, and I like to see fun things, cool things happen in Charlottesville. Yeah. So I was really excited to get on board with them and to see what I can do with it.
Yeah. That's good stuff, man. So, you know, it's TOMTOM festival seems to pick up steam and it keeps getting, you know, stronger and stronger, bigger and bigger, man, better and better. But now let's start at the beginning because you're well versed with the group and whatnot. And, you know, it's in my humble opinion, you know, like, as you know, you said you listened to the show, so, you know, we're going to keep it 100, keep it 100. Right. So, you know, like, so one of the many things is let's talk about sort of the, you know, like how it started and whatnot, because I'm the kind of person, man, where it's like, we can do so much good together, you know, working together and all that, regardless of like any like personal stances and personal beliefs and whatnot. You know, just kind of what we do, Max and I do, we give folks the information and then you make your choice. You choose on your own, you know? So for the folks who may be from out of town, may be new to the area and whatnot, just give folks on what this, you know, what the foundation does and what the Spring Festival is about.
Absolutely. And yeah, again, thank you for having me here. The festival, from my standpoint, it brings the communities together. And I say communities, you know, we are one giant community, but also we are separate. You know, you have these groups here, these groups here, these groups here. And that's one thing that I find a major value that this festival does, even though the festival week is a short time, it's just 1 week of the month. But then there are these other smaller initiatives that go throughout the year. But the idea I'm on board with about, you know, oh, we have this initiative, or we have this business, or we have this nonprofit, et cetera. And then we can show like, oh, Charlottesville's really doing something here, you know, and I think it's also a good sort of blueprint for others to take and to do their own version of it with. That's also what I would like to see.
Got you. So and so it is, and with the community partnerships piece, is that a pillar of it? Like are you guys trying to empower groups and folks like to continue the work that they do, or like you just said, to even do like offshoots of maybe similar ideas, or is it, or you know, or is it more of like a collaborative like think tank, right, to kind of bring the ideas here?
Absolutely, it's kind of all of the things. It's definitely a pillar of the festival itself. So like the community partner program, and right now the second round is going through the 31st. That's why I wanted to get on here before that people have time to get on the website, tomtomfoundation.org.
Oh, so we talking about this week?
Talking about this week. Yeah. So I really wanted to, you know, you can, all you got to do is apply, and then there's steps after that. But as long as you get that application in, if you got an idea, if you got if you're working with a nonprofit, if you're just an individual, you want to bring something to the table, thoughts, ideas, you supply. And then with that, you become part of the overall festival. Your name gets out there, your organization's name gets out there. There are opportunities to have meetings where they sort of they help train you, guide you on things logistics wise, like can like steer you in right ways. We help with your communications, help that amplify your message. And like Charles said, I have a marketing business for Z Marketing. So that's where my mind always goes, with amplifying your message and being intentional with what your message is. And so that is a springboard, I think, for a lot of different things, whether it be business wise, whether it be an initiative that you're part of.
Okay. Well, sounds like from what I can tell, I don't know, I guess at some point or another I've attended a TOMTOM event, I guess. But from what I can tell, it sounds like that you all do great work in terms of giving opportunity for the community to come together, and I guess providing a platform for small and minority businesses to be able to you know, share what it is that they do.
But
everybody. But this is the show. I'm talking about Black people. I'm talking about Black people. All right. Look, I'm not even going to be apologetic about it. I'm talking about us. But I say all that to say is that despite all the good work that's done it seems like, to me at least, that TOMTOM Festival also receives a lot of skepticism or criticism, even as far as, I guess, the motivation behind the work. The motivation behind the work, and then, appropriating some of the work as well. And I want you to speak to that, because I think, again, it's a wonderful opportunity for people. But when you talk TOMTOM, in almost every conversation that I have about it, this other thing is always hanging around, as far as whether or not this festival and the organizers or owner of the foundation is truly in favor of Black people and their businesses, or just kind of found a niche and something to kind of ride off of and ultimately profit from.
And maybe start at the beginning with that, of like, because one of the perceptions, whether it's a misconception, you can let us know, is that it started off as a celebration of Thomas Jefferson. And then so in the Black community, it was, should we even be celebrating Thomas Jefferson? Right.
100%. And I can only speak to what I know. And that's all valid. And I've had these conversations with folks, right? Because even prior to my getting involved with it, I didn't really know much about it, to be honest. I just knew it was in the park, back in the day. And like, there were some businesses that had tables and there was beer and music. Cool, And then when I came to the table, that was the first year was the block party. So then I got to know a little bit more about the foundation and about how it evolved from what it was before. And I do believe it had the genesis of the idea was to bring Charlottesville together, but with the idea of like, what's Charlottesville? Was Thomas Jefferson. That's where the name originally came from. But then hearing feedback from the community, and people was like, I feel excluded from that because that doesn't seem like something that is invite me and my community, and here's why. And then my understanding is
what was the reasons? Do you have any idea what those reasons were?
That
people didn't feel excluded? Was it just
the name
of it, or other reasons?
The name of it. That's the only thing that I knew of personally. And I still get from some elders I talk to, especially, like, change that name. Right. Like, like, I hear you, I don't know if it's gonna happen, but I'll pass along that info. But through speaking with different community members and wanting to evolve and change and be more open and inclusive and inviting to everybody in the community, they switched it from, well, it's still TOMTOM, but it means tomorrow. Meaning looking towards the future, evolving, especially after.
It's a nice spin.
Yeah, it's a brand. Again, with the marketing and branding, I understand, like, it's hard to change the name, but give a different meaning to it, different connotation to mark the evolution of it. And so with that, with that same time frame, we had the block party, which made sure we had a hip hop stage, make sure we have events that have hip hop, R&B, go-go music, Afro beats, different things like that, along with the Latin American community got different events that tailored to different groups, and with people of those groups heading off those initiatives. So it's not just like, oh, there's this white dude that's doing all this. No, he's like, I don't know. Like, and I respect when people is like, they're like, I don't know, and so they go to people to be like, all right, this is what I'm hearing. Are you able to bring your thoughts, your ideas, your perspective to the table? So to not co-opt things, to not, take what is already existing and like just slap a name on it, but it is incumbent upon, individuals that come to the table to still, represent themselves and make it their own.
Yeah, because that is part of what, some of the talk that goes on, is that it's like the appropriation part comes into where it's like, okay, you got Black people doing this thing, but then it's like, it doesn't get the support that it maybe should, even from our own people and from me personally. Like that's more my plight. Like, I'm like, if communities feel like that we should own something or do something, then we need to support each other.
Right.
Like, so my plight ain't even with the TOMTOM for my more so because they're gonna do what they do. But my plight is more so with us. It's like when do we band together to create something of value, right? Like
Absolutely.
because if somebody else do it, more power to you.
Absolutely.
Somebody going to do it, you know?
Absolutely.
But one of the questions that I had too off of that is the founder shares a birthday with Thomas Jefferson too. Is that accurate, or is that urban myth?
I don't know. When is Thomas Jefferson born?
It's like I think it was June. Don't get me lying.
I don't know. I don't know. I gotta fact check afterwards. I don't know.
Okay, you'll have to forgive me for not knowing the answer.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't either. I don't know either one's birthday actually.
Gotcha. That was one thing that I heard. Which, I guess you can understand why some people would feel like that could be a little self-aggrandizing. But but I'm glad that you understand the point, because y'all ain't hurting, because like the mall be packed. Like so anything we saying here right now, it ain't gonna hurt you. Like we just clearing the air on things.
Oh no, and I do appreciate the time for the conversation, because it is a real conversation, and we do have this.
Do you have these conversations among? Yeah. 100%. Okay.
100%. Because again, like I remember, like first when some people brought some misgivings to me, I was like, oh, what? I didn't even know it was a thing. And then, and it repeats. And again, like what Charles was saying, this thing does exist, and I take the positive attributes from it, and then try to bring what I can to make it even better.
Yeah.
Because I'm all about like making sure we're in the room and making sure that someone is in the room that can speak to different perspectives.
Right.
I find it important, and for it to be received. And that's what I've always felt. My input has been valued and received. Martez, who couldn't make it today.
Yeah.
Same, he makes his voice heard and his opinions heard and in every conversation. And he makes sure to check things that might come up that are blind spots for some people. So, I do think that all of it is important to talk about, and the feelings that people have are valid.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wish your ED was here to kind of address it directly. 13th, January 13th.
No, April.
April 13th.
Festival's always April. So
okay.
April 13th.
So that he could kind of address these questions directly. But what is the strategy or the plan, at least from his perspective, in terms of overcoming this stigma, if you will, that's attached to his festival?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what I've learned about it, people, especially people that come from a different background than I come from, is that they got a lot of learning to do. There's a lot of learning to do, and part of that learning is having uncomfortable conversations for people to directly be like, this, I don't like this because of X, because if somebody's just like, I don't like it, it rubs me the wrong way. Well, I need a little more information than that to work off of. So you'd be like, this is exactly this look. This is not a good look. So we need to adjust this, and then adjustments are made. And that's, for me, that's all I can ask someone to do, because it's like, yes, I understand, like, all right, if you have an event and looks like all white faces in it, I'm not going to feel invited to that. I mean, the downtown mall itself is an issue where, as it pertains to, like, there's very few Black-owned businesses on the downtown mall, historically, but even more so right now. And so that's an issue that is greater than just that of the festival, but one part of the festival is making sure everybody feels invited and shows up to. So when the block party week days happen, it's like, yo, every time I walk up and down the mall and I see people from all, from high school, middle school, like today, and they're like, I've never seen so many Black folks on the mall. I've never seen so many, this. I've never seen hip hop played on the mall with different acts and whatnot, with the dance teams and everything. And it's like, yes. And then I say, the power that is able to make that happen, I see it's a lot of work. It's tough to make happen. And so I want to support that to keep on happening. Like I said before, you want to make it your own, you want to do something like that, take what they do, learn from that, do your own thing, do just a piece of it. Learn from these things.
Another question I was curious about, does the foundation invest or offer any scholarships for any of the businesses that are participating in the festival? Black-owned businesses?
In the previously, I think there were some like grants and stuff given out. I don't think there are any directly, But one thing that they do have right now is every year they have the crowdfunding pitch night.
Yeah, yeah.
Which that's done in partnership with CIC. But different entrepreneurs can come with their ideas, their business ideas and whatnot. And there are vendors. There's a section for vendors, performers, artists that you can sign up for the festival as well. So there are different opportunities. We've talked about sort of like having sort of a scholarship or grant. You know, one thing is like I know that the festival itself is very expensive to put on, so that's a conversation that is ongoing.
Okay.
But I like the idea.
Yeah, me too. I think
that
it
could
would
go a long way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because honestly, I mean, like that would be like in the face of folks who do see some of it as appropriation or whatnot. Like they can see it as okay, well then it's not just bringing everything under the TOMTOM umbrella, but you're actually then using some of those resources
to invest,
like through the sponsorship, to actually invest in the folks that's on the mall, right? That's dancing, performing, for them to then take it back to their groups, right?
Oh, right.
You know,
yeah, absolutely.
You know, but yeah, but ladies and gentlemen,
Money talks.
Yeah, for sure. We are speaking with the media manager for TOMTOM Foundation, Scott HAMLER. Is that correct for the foundation or just the festival?
So for the foundation, I help with social media marketing.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not the manager of it. So I don't want to get my title too high.
Okay.
And then I'm
get you a raise.
I mean, that's what's up. I'm all for it. If it come with a raise, and also part of the advisory board. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Thank you, man. And
so you can take all this that we just talked about
That's what I do.
straight back to the board.
That's
Okay?
right. That's
All
right. That's what I heard.
Look,
That's what people saying.
Make things happen.
Yeah, and that's exactly, we're happy to have you, man, because that's what we wanted to do. Because again, like within the community or we're at the water coolers, like wherever the talks happen, there's questions about the the origin of TOMTOM, the intent of TOMTOM, and then the effects of it. Right?
Absolutely.
And I think you're doing a great job answering the questions and explaining it. And to me, Max, it's about, if the facts are out there, it is what it is. And then at the end of the day, is that person's, prerogative, on if they attend, they partner, whatever the case is. But just having a conversation out in the open and not behind closed doors is the best way to handle it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this is something that I feel like we as, in my humble opinion, try to do, but seeing the face of the person, the ED, or whatever the gentleman's title is, owner of TOMTOM Festival, seeing his face and, the public seeing his face and talking to them directly, about why it is that he does what he does and what he hopes to bring to Charlottesville and bring to the community goes a long way.
100%.
That money do too.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
let me see, talk to me directly.
And I've said that. I've said that directly. And I think, and it's not wanting the face to be the representation of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think that's what he has misgivings about. But also there's a reality to it.
That's right.
It still is.
That's right.
You can't detach it. So I agree. Just like me being here, I can't represent the whole thing, but I'm here to talk about a piece of it. And that's what we all should do with whatever sort of organizations we're involved with. Back up why you are putting your time into this thing. And I agree with you, Charles. Like, if you're not putting out the information, then people will fill in the gaps of information themselves. So that's what I can help do. I can help, fill in some of the gaps and like speak to the mission and where we want to go. And also be like, that's where it was.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a quick break. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. Because we have a couple of audience questions as well and comments for Scott from media with the TOMTOM Foundation. So stay tuned. And y'all hit us up online, IMHO Talk Show, if you have any questions and comments. All right, be right back.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories. More people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay in line with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
To the Ism, H to the Izzo Talk Show.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, live and in living color with Scott Hamler representing the TOMTOM Foundation today. But hit my man up at that 4Z marketing too. Like I said at the beginning of the show, man. Like I'm guarantee y'all have seen something with that has his staple on it. Telling you. But we are here talking about the upcoming opportunities for community partnerships. So we're talking about the origin, the intent, and the impact of the TOMTOM Foundation and Festival. As only In My Humble Opinion can do. So a couple of things we have online here. One is curious to know when the branding shift occurred, and I just want to know more in general. And said, Max, thanks for asking.
Yeah, I believe it was, and I don't want to speak out of turn because again, it was before I got involved with it. But I believe the branding shift happened. It was like pandemic years, like 2021, 2022, something like that. It could have been prior.
And how long has it been in existence? When did the festival start or the foundation start?
Oh, this is the 13th.
Okay.
This is the 13th 15th, I believe.
Okay, so roughly,
Yeah.
so it had been
You
going
see it on the
for
website,
like 8 or
whatever.
9 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Has it always been on the downtown mall?
In the past, they had them in the parks.
Okay.
I think it was a couple of different places, but when I remember just being a Charlottesville resident, I remember it being in the parks and they had music and tents with like the different businesses. That's just what I remember from before I was involved with it.
Okay.
Yeah. And in full transparency, like, so you can understand how if somebody was to say, all right, for 8 or 9 years, we believe that this was celebrating a white man, right? For 8 or 9 years, and then maybe some money was gonna get lost, and I changed my branding. You know what I mean? Like that's the conversation, you know?
Sure.
Right. So I mean, so that, it's understandable why people would be kind of worry of what am I really celebrating here?
Absolutely.
Right.
Ask the questions. Yeah. Like, I mean, and that is one thing that I know people have talked about to me directly for the last few years when I'm like, hey, you should bring your thing to the festival. Well, I thought it was a Thomas Jefferson thing. It was like, I think they put that to bed. But also if you don't feel comfortable with it, you don't feel comfortable with it. You know, I get that 100% too. But that's the thing with this town. It's like everything that's been around for a few years that is predominantly white run may not have a great rep, you know, and so it's our choice to be a part of it, stay away from it, you know, and my choice is to find that area that I can insert my opinion and my perspective to whatever is going on. Because if I'm not at the table, if none of us are at the table, then it just be siloed.
Right.
You on the menu if you're at the table, right?
Right.
You know,
Well, I mean, if the motives are in the right
place,
place, if the motives are in the right place, then it's very easy to address this situation. But you can't do that if you're absent. So
100%.
And I work at the university.
Like I tell my kids, let me speak to the person in charge.
Yeah,
100%.
Facts. And Max, you know, and I work at university, and so you know, there are people and there are initiatives that's constantly trying to break down the structural like discrimination and racism, right? But you're talking about an institution that's over 300 years old, right? But I will say that it's a huge difference between something that was started 300 years ago versus something started 13 years ago, or whatever the case is. So, so we shouldn't be creating new forms of white supremacy. Not saying that's what it is, but I'm saying you should be watchful. You should ask questions.
That's right. Check it.
Yeah, but one other thing that we had asked is, will tomorrow be the logo while marching?
Will be the logo while marching.
Yeah, so I'm guessing like the parade on the downtown mall, maybe is what I'm guessing that may mean. Will tomorrow be the logo? And listener, if you wouldn't mind clarifying that, I'm guessing just making sure that it doesn't say like anything about Thomas Jefferson.
Oh no. There's no mention of Thomas
Jefferson.
I mean, the logo itself, it just says TOMTOM Festival, and it's a sun. It's like a picture, like iconography. There's nothing on the website. Nothing is about Thomas Jefferson, and nothing that we talk about has to do with anything with any old white men. That or the especially in Charlottesville with the talk of statues being taken down. We make sure that we're about the present, and that's what the tomorrow is about. Looking towards the future. What can this place look like? What can we do to make this place fulfill the vision and ideals that I think most of us have? For me personally, my family's from here. I planted roots here, and I want to see fun, cool stuff happens. But also, yes, I want to make sure that it's the ideals that are held up as well.
I like to go on record to say I like old white men, Grants, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin. I ain't got no problem with old white men myself.
You like green faces.
Yeah. But let's play devil's advocate for here.
You've been doing that all day,
right?
By the way.
I told you I'm gonna play villain today. Right. Okay. When it comes to organizations and creations, right? We are selective as when we want to buckle down and say we're against something, right? And when you have something, let's say for instance, we go back and this thing is called Thomas Jefferson, right? And it gives the opportunity that was not there for organizations to be accentuated in the way that it is. Because truth be told, I believe the city gives money towards this organization, right?
To the festival, yeah.
But that's money that would not been given or accessible to the people that look like me if somebody didn't want to do it. Now, you want me to name it what you want me to name it. You want me to do it the way that you want me to do it, but you're not the one who took the initiative to get this thing started. I do have a problem with any person that comes in secondly displaying something that they did not take the time to create themselves, especially if you are a person of power and influence, because you had these opportunities as well, right? So there isn't too many things that I know of in America that is not created by somebody that did not look like me as how it's positioned. We can go back to Kentucky Fried Chicken was stolen. Blues was stolen. We know all these things, right? But that does not stop you from being able to find your place to be able to grow yourself, right? So I think too often we pick the wrong fights because we don't have an exit plan for it. Besides, we need to get together.
Right.
That's the problem I have when it comes to anything that comes about. Now, granted, I'm not going to be out there promoting slavery, people being hung, dragged behind trucks, tractors, and all that kind of stuff, right? But at the same time, depends on who tells the story. Then we're talking about the strength of Black people and the contributions that were given for America to be where it is. So I understand the confusion and why arguments take place, because depending on who's telling the story, who has the microphone, it can be positioned any type of way. It can be looked upon as help. It can be looked upon as additional white supremacy, right? We just have to understand that if we decide to mention something or ask questions, does it have a place of growth, or is it just something for us to say? And I think too often that has happened to the people who, the majority of the people that I see doing things inside of Charlottesville are not from Charlottesville, in the Black community, whether people get mad at me or not, right? I'm not saying that you didn't have your time or place, but when you start laying out people who are actually doing something, they're not originally from Charlottesville. So for the ones who feel like there's been a million atrocities here in Charlottesville. We understand it. Within a 74-mile range, you got 5 presidents, right? But does that mean that we then complain that we don't have nothing here to do? And then we have murders in parking garages and places, right? So when are we going to decide what fight are we going to do? Are we going to fight it for 2 minutes? Are we going to fight it from A to Z? What are we going to do? Because too often we talk in a way that has no substance to it.
Right.
It's more like fog in the wind.
Right.
Well, I guess I'll respond. Is that for you to respond to?
I don't know.
Might be for me and Charles to respond to. Might be. I think the first thing I just want to point out is that when the conversation started, I acknowledge the fact that you all are doing a lot of good work, providing a platform again for Black and minority, but other businesses, small businesses as well, right here in the Charlottesville community, providing a platform and a space for them to be able to grow and get their business in front of people. And that is worth what it is worth. I do not want you to at all think that I'm trying to take something away from that. And we are grateful for that, let me say. Now, but I must also say that we are committed to being truth tellers here, or at least having very honest conversations, right? And so I couldn't sleep well if you came into this studio and sat down for this conversation and we not address some of the issues that we hear pertaining to the TOMTOM Festival or the foundation, right? That's what I expect. That's the obligation that I have to my listening audience, is to be very real and upfront and honest. The thing is that while Razor made an analogy to Kentucky Fried Chicken, And I've seen him and my kids sit at a table and eat Kentucky Fried Chicken while talking about how Colonel Sanders stole the recipe from a black woman and made millions off of it. That being said, it is not like we cannot hold these conversations. Be critical of different opportunities or whatever you want to call it that are here and offered to us and our community and different things like that. And I think that this conversation is no more than addressing those issues. It's an opportunity, if you will, depending on who you're asking, for the foundation to kind of air out. Again, wish your director was here, but to air out and to explain themselves with regards to the criticisms that they are receiving from the community, right? So, we have, again, an expectation and an obligation to have these type of conversations, not in our homes, not behind closed doors, but right up front so people can hear them, okay? So I give you your respect. I appreciate what you do, but you have to understand that we must also do what we're supposed to do too.
No, please do.
You're doing
and
a
I
great job,
appreciate
by the
that. Yeah, I really do appreciate it because like we talked before, these are conversations that people have. So it needs to be louder. And I appreciate people weighing in because I have questions too. It's the same thing, and I won't defend something that I don't believe in, and I won't also speak to things that I can't speak of, whether it be like people have personal experiences that I really have no idea about, but I can go with what the impression is, and versus what the reality that I've seen is, and I agree 100%. If you don't rock with it, don't be a part of it.
Right.
Like that, nobody is forced to be a part of anything.
Understand.
But for me, and for what I'll speak to is use these things that exist.
Yep.
As long as you don't compromise yourself, use these things that exist in order to move ahead, whatever you want to move ahead. And that's whether it's something you want to move, like get attention to the city, whether it's something like you got a business and you want to expand your platform for your business. You have an initiative that you want for it to be heard by the right ears. But you gotta use that on an individual level, and see if that's something that you want to do.
And the truth of the matter is that is what we as Black people have always done.
All the time,
right?
every facet of life.
It is a way of life, but you put it very well. Just do what you do, as long as it doesn't compromise who you are.
Yep. Yeah. And in the face of it all, there are folks who I know have done just that, and that's why I said in the beginning, like my pain is not towards anyone other than my own people. Like that's who my plight is for. When it comes to, we have so many gifts, we have so many talents, and all this stuff that we sit on, right. But then when it's time to complain, we know how to complain, and it like, so just some, like I'm here to motivate, right? I'm here to motivate. Like that's what I'm about.
I'm of the same ilk. I'm of the same, and that. I understand. Like you said, air out what you want to air out, but also have an action behind it too. I mean that for just everybody that has. Not just this thing, but all things, It's like I got many issues with this city, this county, this area, and I will complain about several things too, but I'm also going to work towards making something happen, making it better.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So we are joined by Scott.
Now, what did you come here to talk about?
Yeah.
Thank you for breaking it back.
I was actually going to say that. Yeah, Scott, this week, what do the people need to know about what they got to get done before January 31st?
January 31st is the last day to put in your application to join the community partner program. And again, it's on TOMTOMfoundation.org. Check it out. See for yourself if it's something you want to be a part of. There may be value in it for you, there may not, but just take the information in. All it does is get that information to the people that organize it, and then the process happens. So if at any point along the process you don't like it, you can of course drop out, but it's free. I'm a business owner, so I'm always like, use what you can out there.
Right.
Use it to your benefit.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, man, we have been joined on Max Razor. Y'all good? We got. Let me check the comment thread. Make sure everybody's okay. Yeah, I think we good.
We're good.
We good.
No,
Yes,
thank
indeed.
you very
Yeah,
much
for
for,
sure.
for joining us today and being willing to engage in that conversation. We hope you'll come back. We hope you'll bring Paul.
I would definitely be back. I would definitely tell him to come. And I hope to come back for other initiatives involved with as well.
Let's
Thank
do
you.
it.
Yeah. Thank you.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay in line with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning into In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories. More people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay in line with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 1013 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 1013 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 1013 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 1013 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 1013 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 1013 Jams.
I am HO Talk Show. Sir Charles.
Max.
Razor.
Yes, indeed. We are at the bottom of the show, top of the last hour. And you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us and Razor, Max, and yours truly. Appreciate that. Because we have local brother, homeboy, that's going to join us right about now to tell an amazing story, an inspirational story, a triumphant story, a heartfelt story. None other than PERTELLE Gilmore. My man, how you doing this afternoon?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yes,
Thank all y'all for having me. I really appreciate it. And it's good to be in the land of the living.
There you go, brother.
Yeah,
There you go. I'm happy to be able to grace these airwaves with you. And you have by your side none other than the good Dr. Douglas. Andrea Douglas.
You flatter me way too much. You get a church introduction.
Hallelujah.
That's right.
That's how you do it.
Yeah. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Douglas.
Good afternoon to you all. Thanks again for having me. Appreciate it.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So also, our sister girl Leslie also, reached out and told us about the conversation and the signing with author PERTELLE Gilmore, February 8th, right? And that's going to be free entry at 4 p.m. But RSVP is required. You all can go on our page. You can go on the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center's page, and there's a QR code and link for you to register to come to the auditorium on that February the 8th at 4 to hear about this brother Gilmore's new book. I guess you can call it a memoir. You can call it a lot of things because you got poetry in there. You have short stories. It's like biographical, all that good stuff, man. So it is the evolution of the apex predator, right? The autobiographical poems and short essays of a former gangster, The Unfolding by PERTELLE Gilmore. And so I guess maybe to kick us off, Dr. Douglas, since you're here, we're going to dig into your story because we know it's people got to understand the story, how this came to be, right? We made you want to put these words on paper for the world to see. But Dr. Douglas, this conversation at the Jefferson, how did that come about? Like, what inspired you to work with this young man to make this an event at your auditorium?
Well, we spend a lot of time at the Heritage Center telling the history of the African American community. That's what we claim we do, right? But in reality, if you come on a tour with us, if you go inside our exhibitions, what you're really hearing about is the moment from 1865 to somewhere in the 1970s, right? But there is a break in this community that happened somewhere around that time. And I have to say, my relationship with the Gilmore family is kind of an odd one. The first person I ever met was Curtis Gilmore.
Okay.
Right. He was working over at Blue Moon Diner and he was really kind to me. But one of the things he said to me was, I know the very first moment that I no longer believed in authority. And he had gone to Greenbrier for a year. He was getting off a bus and a white teacher called him a nigger. Right. And that moment, I knew that the story that I knew, there was more to it. Then I talked to my good friend, Eddie Harris, who comes to see me every now and then, and he fills me in on things. And I come to understand that I don't know all the story. And here I claim to be telling the story of this place, but I don't go beyond a certain point. Right.
That's deep.
I also understand that where we are in this moment in time, we live our lives over and over and over and over again. And someone said to me, this is just like the 1980s. Right. And I'm not, in 1980, I understood I'm from New York. We understood what drug epidemics looked like. But so what I hope is by having this conversation at the Heritage Center is that we come to a place where we're telling the full history. There are decisions that I have to make every single day that I hope to be making with my community. And so this is one of those decisions that this community needs to say, okay, we're now almost 50 years post this story. How do we tell it to each other? How do we tell it to other people? And so let's understand it. And that's what my hope is for that to be.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for prefacing it that way. Yeah, because one of the things, as we saw another tragedy this week and just last night, there also seems to be that gap of like we lose a lot of young brothers, right? Like they're in between sort of being minors and being able to be on their own, and then a lot of bad choices get made. You know, and so as much inspiration that we can give to help, the better. So Patel, man, I'm going to kick it to you and let's start at the beginning. Take as much time as you need. In fact, for those that don't know your story, you gotta let us know, you know, how the essays and the poems and things in this book sort of came to be. Like, what is your story? What led you, you know, to this point?
Yeah, and Dr. Douglas, she hit it. We're a community. So my story is everybody's story. I'm a part of, you know, of everybody's story, especially the community of Charlottesville. The beginning of the book, it comes from a time of despair, a time of hurt, of chaos, confusion, disorder inside my mind, my soul. And I was looking for a way out to vent, to try to get the poison out of my system where it wouldn't reflect my decisions. And I found a therapeutic value in writing my thoughts, in writing how I felt. And it was something that began as a 14-year-old juvenile that was facing time in a juvenile prison for an act of violence, you know, that was perpetuated in my community. I'm from the community. I'm from, just let me backtrack a little bit to give everybody an understanding of who I am. I was born and raised in Charlottesville. I was born in the first projects. I always tell people it was a form of gentrification because the people from Vinegar Hill and Star Hill, you know, Randall Row and all of these people were displaced and put inside of this, you know, this project, this housing project, you know, which I call a project of the government. And I was born December 13th, 1975, right at the end of a war that was inside of West Haven. For those who are old enough to remember, you know, it was a situation where a native son has stole something from Safeway, which was a grocery store that was actually in the projects, on the hill of the projects, and he ran inside of the hood, and the hood protected him like they're supposed to do. They wouldn't allow the outsiders to infiltrate, which were the police, the colonizers, you know, who at that specific time, you know, it was all about perception and how people interpreted, you know, what they saw and felt. So that's how they were looked at, and they protected this native son, and it started a riot. So while I was in my mother's womb, you know, this is a story she told me, you know, as I was interviewing her. I never knew this. You know, she was gassed, you know, my family was gassed, they were beat down. And this is what I came into the world, you know. This set the stage for Pertelle Gilmore.
Right.
So, you know, being raised in West Haven, you know, coming up, I was a product of two well-known families for two polar opposite reasons. You know, one were, you know, really street people, you know, involved, you know, in the street life. And the other ones were working class, middle class people, you know, trying to make a better life, you know, for the family. And everybody, my uncles, my family, they were all wise to the streets, and they, you know, they raised me in love. They raised me in the best way they knew. They raised me in a nurturing environment. But a lot of times, like I always tell people, the generational curse is handed down. It's the perpetual cycle of ignorance. And I was handed, you know, the love that they was given, which was a damaged love, you know, a damaged love for probably 400 years of oppression and slavery that was handed down to us. So that sets the stage for me. And I come up in the hood, you know, I worship the people that I was around, you know, as we all do, the adults in our life, you know, we worship them as gods. You know, God is whatever you worship, whatever you spend most of your time with.
That's right.
So that is your God. And these were my gods. And I lived and breathed. And they trained me in the ways of survival. And she spoke of Curtis Gilmore. Dr. Andrea Douglas spoke of Curtis Gilmore. May he rest in peace. But he was a survivalist. You know, he was a good person, but he was a survivalist, and he taught me how to survive in the streets. And me being a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Not in tune with myself, but more my innate qualities, the stuff inside of me, it put me a little bit more ahead of my peers. And I went through hell, you know. The 80s and the 90s was a rough time in Charlottesville, Virginia. We seen outsiders come in and take over our blocks. You know, I was born and raised in 10th Page neighborhood. I watched outsiders come in and take over our blocks and start up corners, selling drugs. You know, and us being, you know, from that era, you know, these impressionable children, you know, at the time of this era, you know, we were poor. We were very poor. We didn't really understand the poor at that time, but we seen a way, an opportunity where we could make a little money and not adhere to the dogma that was perpetuated by our gods, which we had proven, you know, through trial and error, empirical knowledge. It was a bunch. It just wasn't truth. It wasn't based upon truth. It was handed down ignorance. You know, and I lived the life. I lived the life of a street man. By the time I was 14, I was a made man. I moved through the streets. As one of the lessons, 14. Yeah, one of the lessons that the OGs taught me as a child, and they drilled it in me. It said, who is the original man? The original man is the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, father of civilizations, and God of the universe. And you know, when you tell a young, impressionable child who's looking for some kind of power, who's watching his idols, you know, be succumbed to this white pebble, this crack thing, and they're looking for some kind of hope, what better way to, you know, to get it is something that makes you feel like you're something. Empowerment, you know. And that's what that last, I always tell the young guys who I mentor, that last phrase, God of the universe. When I heard that and it was broken down to me, it changed me. It changed me in a way that it still affects me to this day, because I look at life so differently, you know. I look at life differently than most of my peers.
At what point did you realize that you were being handed down a bunch of false truths?
When I started seeing my gods addicted to crack, like she's like you know, Curtis, my uncle, at his latter years, he was always a wonderful man, always. Curtis Jr., excuse me, not Curtis Sr. We talking about Curtis Jr. He was always a wonderful man, but I watched how crack took this Superman and just destroyed him. And his friend Herman and bro, everybody, these gods of mine. And I was like, what? And they used to drill us, you know. Razor can confirm, you know, how it was back in the days coming. They used to drill us, do it this way, do it this way. If you do it this way, this is what's gonna happen. But if it worked, why y'all not doing it? And then why are y'all allowing these colonizers to come in and destroy our community? And once I figured that out, and me just being who I am and my comrades, you know, two of them, they got killed. November 3rd, 1999, Cedric LaPriest Walker was murdered in Garrett Square Projects. And August 25th, Man Willis was murdered in Prospect in 2000, not even 10 months later. My two best friends who I talk about in the book. So we were witnessing all this stuff, and we were alone, and we had to figure it out. And I'm not one who's going to sit back and grovel, especially at that time, because people were dying around us. We were seeing people afflicted with certain spiritual ailments that I understand now, but we didn't understand what was going on. And at the age of probably 14, I, you know, for lack of a better term, I said, F it. We all said it. My whole entire generation, at least the ones that I was around, and we made a way out of no way. And it made some of us rich. It destroyed collectively and individually a lot of lives. You know, these decisions that we made at 14 and still destroying lives. It reverberates to this day, the decisions that we made then.
Yeah. And family, we are talking to the author, PERTELLE Gilmore, of the book, The Unfolding. PERTELLE, so even that title, and I hear what you're saying, and even when I saw some excerpts from the book, The Unfolding, what were some of your like skills that you developed to unfold like all of that information? Because from what I read so far, like it sounds like there were, like you said, there were people that you respected, that you held to a highest esteem, right? And they gave you a lot of truths, but they were men, so they were fallible because they were human, just like you,
just like me,
right? Like so, and that's like that's deeper than you know, bro.
You've said
that's deeper than you know, So it's like when you, like, how did you start unfolding that? How did you start discerning between flawed people can still give me a lot of wisdom? And doesn't mean I got to be just like them. You know, I can kind of like take the wheat and throw away the, you know, the weeds.
That's right.
You know,
That's a beautiful the way you put that, because I was just talking to a friend out there and my business partner about a story in the Bible about a mule, a guy that was on a mule, and the mule was trying to save the guy's life. It was stopped because the angel was around the corner about to kill him, slice his head off. This is in the Old Testament. And the mule would sit down.
Right.
And he started beating and said, move.
Yep.
So finally the mule said, look, man, I'm trying to save your life. You know, you beat me because I'm a mule, because I'm a jackass. But listen to my message. Because I'm saving your life. So as I mature, you know, as we age, like, let me back up a little bit. There's a conflicted thing with Mr. Pertelle Gilmore. A lot of people tell you this. Pertelle Gilmore is a very, very, very extremely intelligent person. But it takes years. Intelligence and wisdom are two separate things. You know, wisdom comes through experience. It comes through actively going through the process of acquiring knowledge to be better in your environment, better for your community, better for your family. So now getting back to what you were saying, Charles, all of that stuff that these gods had given me, I use to this day. I used to write this book. I used to, to start the nonprofit. I used to run my business, because if it don't apply, let it fly. They always say, put it in your pocket, and you're gonna be able to use it later on, because like Solomon said, nothing is new under the sun.
That's right.
So yeah, all of these experiences, it created me an awakening to want to know, how could I be the most successful at every level of my life? And in the streets, that comes with treachery. It comes with violence. It comes with control. It comes with power. It comes with, not having no fear. And, placing those innate qualities of myself, with the knowledge that I was given, yeah. So it does work. It does apply. But when you're a child and you really don't have really nothing to live for in terms of the next day, as far as hope, no, we got to figure this thing out. So the unfolding is me figuring it out. It's me figuring out. The beast, I believe the man is two people. I believe we are beasts. Our carnal desires are ruled by the five senses, but we are also gods. We are also intelligent. We have a choice every day. Are we going to serve the flesh, the carnal, or are we going to serve the God in us? The God in us is the ones that serves the community, your family, goes through knowledge, certainty, sincerity, truthfulness, love, compliance, and acceptance, and you build something that's generational. That's the God, and that's the war that's within me. And that's why I'm such a polarizing figure, for real, because I don't mind people seeing my battle. I am an open epistle to the world. I've always been. So I don't mind people seeing my struggles, because hopefully if you see my struggles and my triumphs, you're going to learn what to do and what not to do. And I've never been one, to run from that. I've never been run from what I feel. And most people feel what people think about them. I never really thought about that until the latter part of my years, especially with kids watching me, the children watching me.
Razor, you have a question?
Yeah. And this is something that, like, as you were talking and we were talking, pretty much Charles was leading to you how we can help the youth. One thing that you touched on is how once we accept the streets and the rules of the streets, the only, and I hate to even say this, but the only time that we gain clarification of our actions is once we go to prison, right? Why do you feel that we are able, and I'm in this group too, why do you feel that we are able to get to a certain level of understanding once our freedom is taken from us?
Distractions. All great men, you can go back to the thousands of years. All great men, they went to a cave somewhere. They went in a cave somewhere where there was no distractions. Their antennas, their spiritual antennas, their mental antennas, psychological antennas could be in tune with the things, need to be in tune to, so they can live inside their purpose. And it's a gift and a curse, because you got the intentional systematical destruction of our people. This prison system, this prison pipeline is part of that. We all know that, whether you want to admit it or not. In your heart, it's a big business. But however, when you have creative minds of guys who have been through the furnace of affliction willingly and honestly and openly put themselves in a position where they want to be better, then it's the best place. You know, I met some of the greatest minds inside of prison, and those great minds come home and do the greatest things.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to know the same question, Razor, and I started studying because I'm a student of history, you know, because the single occurrence of a currently repeated phenomenon, life, which is always revolved 360 degrees, you know. So I'm always studying the patterns. I'm always studying history. And I noticed that is, you know, you can Malcolm X, you know, I'm just naming people. I can name a million people, but just people that a man that people know, or Jesus, Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All of these people went to caves and they came out with a great message and they did great things in the world. And some of them were afflicted with you know, with a past trauma or whatever they was raised in, but they still did great things because they know it was about it was all about the purpose, which wasn't their purpose, but how they fit into the grand scheme of things, you know.
Sure. Going back to the great book for which I serve, it seems like what you're saying is that all men have to go to a wilderness. You know,
that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah, thank you for
the
that.
wilderness, the furnace of affliction, trials, tribulations, you know, hardships. And it's one thing that I talk about in the book is that there are different levels. Our levels of understanding, our levels of intelligence, our levels of experience don't make one better than the other. You know, it's just that we different. It's just that we play a different part. You know, I can't be, if I'm the heart, I can't be the lung. The lung can't be the toe can't be such and such. We got to just play our part. You know, and that's as long as everybody play their part and do it with quality and do every moment with quality, that's the key. But first, anybody who was raised or had any connection with the Black community or with the skin color, brown, black, red, then you got some trauma.
Yeah.
You have some trauma, whether you want to admit it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And the key is we have to heal. The only way you can heal is you have to admit that you are sick. You know, last year I went through a trial, man, where life was trying to crush me. You know, and I'm dealing with a lot of personal issues, you know, my health issues. Everything is piling down on you. But then you look at life and you say, what's wrong with you? What part did you play in this? You know, and that's where the healing comes from. Being honest that you are first sick, that things have happened to you psychologically, mentally, spiritually, on all of emotionally, on all levels of your life that affects your decision making and your conversations. So that's the key.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you for that, man.
So what I hear you saying through is that through your, I guess, lived and learned experiences, we are all broken to some extent. And in order to save, I'll say, our young Black youth, particularly Black males, they need to be healed in order to pull them out of this cyclical, the system of violence against one another and other things that are taken away or that are still in their lives, taking their lives, sending them to prison, so on and so forth.
Yes.
They're broke. These things are they're making their decisions and their actions are based off of their brokenness.
Yes.
And you heal the brokenness, and then you can heal them and change that cycle.
Yeah. That's the key. You know, that's the key. Like okay, I'm 50 years old, man. So, you know, you look at people like me, you know, we don't
But
live
let's not. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? Because oftentimes that brokenness is created by other people in their household, in their village, in their environment that are broken as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know that broken people can heal broken people.
Yeah.
So how do you change that without eliminating the distractions and going off to prison?
You got to have guys like myself, like Razor, like my man over there, my business partner E, who have been through have been through it and want to accept the responsibility. And there are many guys, like she spoke of Eddie Harris. You got, that's my man. Ducey is my man. You know, the spirit. So you got guys like this who have went through these stages and put themselves in a position where not only can they be effective and efficient in their own lives, then they can also teach not just through word, but through actions and deeds. And those are the ones, and individuals like myself, if I choose to accept the responsibility. And that's what it's about every day, accepting the choice because we got the power. You know, all things. We were created in image and likeness of the Creator. No matter what your belief system is, if you call it the universe, God, Allah, we were created with power. And the only way to heal anything, especially a sickness, you have to use the same sickness. You have to use the individuals who were the agents and the perpetuators of this sickness, like myself, Ducey, you know, certain individuals, and put them in the community to help us heal as a whole. But everybody has to buy in. And I'm glad we're on this subject because that's one of the reasons why I walked away from a situation that I had created. It's because everybody doesn't buy in, and then everybody wants the results, but nobody wants to put in the work.
There you go.
And it's to change is painful, man. It's painful. It hurts.
But I'd also like to add to
Yeah,
that
go ahead.
there's a moment too where we have to give each other grace.
Absolutely.
Oh,
right.
man.
Always.
There is that fact. You're willing to face it. We're all willing to face it. But where do we give grace so that we can hear it? Right. And I think that in real terms, going back to the book and reading the book and finding that person in that, you can't hear this person if you're not willing to give him grace.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And I think that's an important thing.
That's it, yeah.
Accept his acceptance of himself and allow that person to be flawed. In that is grace.
Yeah. One of my favorite sayings is a crooked stick still draw straight lines. You know,
Judge not that you should be judged, for the judgment that you meet shall be judged upon you again.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
why do you try to take the speck out your brother eye when you have a plank in your own?
That's word. That's word. You know? Yeah. So, wow. This is a great, encouraging, informative, knowledgeable conversation. You know, all of the above. So we're gonna take a quick break and come right back to it, and we can dig even a little deeper into the into the text, and you can break it down for us because we have a couple comments to get to as well. Because Ducey, Eddie Harris, that's everybody's uncle. Like he's my uncle too. Yeah, that's everybody's uncle, and and shouts out to him. He is listening. So
I've learned more about Charlottesville from
right?
this one man.
Yeah.
I know.
So he's definitely online here, being encouraging.
Hey, Ducey.
And we are, and so when we come back, we can get to one of his questions. But then we also have someone that said, "Man, gratitude for you sharing your story. Very eager to have the book in my hands and its wisdom in my heart."
Okay, thank you. Whoever said that.
Yes, indeed. Miss Adrian said that. So,
Thank you.
So we will be right back. Stay tuned, and if y'all gotta take a bathroom break or something, we understand. Get a snack because we got much more with author PERTELLE Gilmore. Be right back.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. We are here with none other than author of The Unfolding, Pertelle Gilmore, dropping so many gems. Hopefully it is informative and as encouraging to you all as it is to us here at the studio. And shouts out to definitely all of our listeners and viewers online and on the radio airwaves that's chiming in and giving support. Because Pertelle, they also are just as encouraged by this interview. So thank you.
Thank you.
And so we do have a request for you to talk about structure and accountability.
Thank you, Mr. Ducey Harris.
That's right.
Structure and accountability. Without structure and accountability, first let's break that down.
Yeah.
Structure. Without a system, of structure and rules and regulations, to govern yourself individually and collectively in society, you would fail. Without structure, you have to have a structure. And me, Ducey, Eddie Harris, Eddie, Herb Dickinson, Robert Tinsley, Eric Johnson, John Vaya, a lot of us, Barry, just to name a few, we were in a position facing a lot of time, going to prison for a lot of time, all of us. And we had an opportunity to go through something called a therapeutic community that changed a lot of our lives. Everybody's life was in there. And one of the main, the foundation of the program is structure and accountability. When we come up, like as we was talking about in the hood, a lot of us, once we veer left field, there is no more structure and accountability. We hold ourselves accountable, according to the rules and regulations that we determine, which are loose. So, and that's a road to destruction. So to answer, to respond to Mr. Harris, structure and accountability has to be implemented and that goes back to what you was asking too. It has to be implemented if we are to reach the youth. And when I say youth, I'm not just talking about, little males and girls. We got youth that's 40, 50, 60 years old, 70 years old, who never had
mentally and emotionally.
Who never had the opportunity to mature. Who go through and I'm one of those people when it gets to the emotional side, as far as being a person who didn't have a conscience for a lot of years. I just learned how to have feelings with like the last 10 years and to experience it instead of numbing it and just going through it. So yeah, that's what structure and accountability. Structure and accountability puts you in a position where you could be productive and constructive. Mr. Harris, I pull you up, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, there's been so much said here, and it's kind of hard for me to talk about because there's just so much that could be talked about, and just the gravity of the topic. But in thinking about structure and accountability, and you kind of touched on this, are we talking about structure that is introspective, or structure that society creates and then tells us is the way to live by?
Okay,
you touched on it, but
exactly as a people, and I'm speaking to
because it sounds like a lot of what you've learned is all because of interflexion versus what's the construct that society has handed you.
Yeah, the society at large, but the society, my society, which is guys like Eddie Harris, that's destruction. That's kind of structure and accountability. These are the ones. Okay, it's two different types of feelings when you look at an individual. Either you're gonna sympathize with them or empathize with them. Now, I can look at this white male from Greenbrier that that had a flat tire. He's out in the middle of the street crying. I can sympathize with him and help him, but I can't empathize with him. He can't empathize with my struggles. He never lived in the hood. He never been through what I've been through. So he can sympathize with me and try to help me. Guys like Eddie, my peers, my comrades, this is the ones who build the structure and accountability based upon their life experiences of what worked for them individually and collectively through this support group, this peer group. And that's what we should aspire for when it comes to structure and accountability. One thing I want to touch on also is, it was internal, but a lot of it was external, and those guys know it. because when you go through the therapeutic community, the locust therapeutic community, it's a 25-hour a day, 8 days a week, 366 days a year job where you are hyper aware and you're always watching your thoughts. You're always watching, your movements. You're always watching the people around you. It makes you aware, so you will recognize the triggers that will put you in positions that are not conducive to health and wealth or prosperity. And that structure, combined with the internal and the external together, I always say yin and the yang, the polar opposite. When you put that thing together, it brings forth completion.
I appreciate that. I was having that conversation recently because I hear you talking about like relationships or like what's your ecosystem or your community, right? Or what have you. Because we were talking about like, how do you determine your moral compass? Right. And you really need that, right? And if you think about like whether you're thinking about a marriage or whether you're thinking about a family, a community, what have you, or even your, like the larger community, when we look at what's going on right now, like within our government, right? It's like if you have people with no morals trying to tell you how to live morally, right? It's like then the system just broken. So you got to have that level of accountability, right? So I totally feel you.
And that's and this I always preach this. All of this was created by design. It is the intentional and systematical destruction of a nation of people. So if you have an intentional, which is something that is intended, it has a motive, plans, schemes, you have to have some, if the intentional systematical destruction of a people, you have to have something that is intentional and systematical construction of the people. So you got to come, like in the 8th degree of the mathematics that we deal in, is build and destroy. If you build something has to be being destroyed. Two things can occupy the same space at the same time. It's the law of physics. So if we are to battle the intentional destruction of my soul and my people, we have to have an intentional construction. We have to scheme, plan, play chess with this, man. We got to sit down and strategize, and we got to be honest. We got to come to the plate with everything. You can't just be 50%. You got to come with who you are, so we know who you are, your flaws, your weaknesses, so we can enhance them and make those better for the nation. But if you don't have that, if that's not a part of the equation that's inside of your heart, it's not going to get done. We can't do it by this. Yeah, we could make small drops, but if we want a mass movement, that's what it takes.
I got one for you.
Yeah.
All right. Let's. I'm glad that you preferenced that, right?
Yeah.
So let's go where the rubber really meets the road. Before I can bring something to the table to build my community, I have the struggles that I have with who I am, who I've been for a long time, to who I want to become.
That's right.
Can you touch on that? As you, like you said, you didn't mind people looking at your struggles. You wrote your books, you wrote your thoughts down on paper, right? Situations come, life be life. And let's say like the young kids say, right? When those things come, what do you recommend so that you don't revert back to the life of what you know that you're more comfortable with? Because I was one of those people that I can be honest with you. If my anger arose, I was more comfortable with being violent with. I'm gonna take it another step that'll probably end up getting me in trouble. But when I was younger, I was more comfortable with a pistol in my hand than I was with having a conversation.
That's our reality.
Now, people see me as the person that talks on the radio now, but when I was younger, I was the only child. I was the smallest of everybody. I did not like getting beat up. You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm a country boy, so access to the Second Amendment was something that we grew up with, right? So it was a serious struggle for me to understand, use your words, express yourself in a way that you can be understood, as opposed to reverting back to what's more comfortable to you. So I'm asking you as the poet, as the writer, as the person who's educating us, what do you decide to do when a situation puts you to where you want to be, what's more comfortable to you, as opposed to what you say that you want to become?
Your support structure, your peers. Just from my own experiences, if you don't have a peer network around you, and I use that word peer very heavily, people who have had similar experiences, and been through things that you have been through, come from the same background. If you don't have a group of those advisors around you who will hold you accountable, like what Mr. Harris was saying, and you don't have that structure, like what you was saying, being established, that y'all got this understanding, then it's never going to work. We can't do it alone. You got to have that peer group. And I'm living an example of that, because without that peer group, I experience trials, tribulations, you know, and hardship that are very, very, man, you have no idea, you know, the dark places. So having those guys like that around you who to pull you up and say, look, like calling my brother right here, like, look, I'm feeling this way, man. I feel like going out here and doing this, man. What's up? And him telling me, like he did it last week, like, yo, you need to calm down. I'm on my way down there, you know, having brothers like him who've been through it.
That's right.
You know, that group, like, look, and you have to be honest with him, like, look, I'm feeling like, And he's like, you know, if you don't have that, you're not gonna make it. I don't know if that really answered it, Razor.
No.
Yeah, but it's about, like, I always tell people, because we live in a Christian society, so I try to use Christian ideologies or principles. Jesus didn't go out there by himself. He had 12 people around him. He had 12 guys. And he had those 5 exceptional, beautiful women that was around him his last days. So that network, you got to have a network. If you don't have no network of peers around you, you will fall.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I
Can I add something to that too? But you also, within that also, not to bring it back, well, sure, bring it back to the reasons why we're having this conversation, why this story belongs in this place. I think you also have to have a sense of possibility, right? And possibility exists in truth. Possibility exists in, as you say, your peer group. But you have to be able to refer back. There has to be something that holds these stories and these places that you can always refer back to. Because what do you do when you're really out there by yourself? Where do you turn to and look to when there is nothing there? You hope you're strong enough. Right? So, you know, as you start to think about why we tell our histories, why we hold our histories, why all of these places are important. I have watched people come inside my exhibitions and be like, yo, I remember when that happened. I remember where I was. I have an example right in front of me that says this thing can be overcome. Right? And so I really believe that this is, Charles, you talked about it, this ecosystem and defining what ecosystems are, that they do include and should never preclude this place of touchstone and not just personal, not just peer, but your when you talk about your people, right? Black people have overcome a whole lot of things.
Yes, we have.
Right? And if you don't see that somewhere, maybe when you can't find it in yourself or even the guy next to you, because he's having his bad day too, there's got to be a place, right?
That's right.
So, I mean, I think that is why, you know, what I know about the Gilmore family, for instance, they date back to the first settlements of this community, right? You can go back to the Georgetown settlement and the Gilmores are there. This family is a historic family in this community, good, bad, or indifferent, right?
Yep.
So as you start to think about even that, they hold this place in real terms. Their histories are our histories, as we started out to say, right? And I think that's also really important, that when we need to think of our ecosystems as multiple.
That's right.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But I want to give you opportunity to also share an excerpt from the book with us, you know, here on air. And you know, and as you get to it, I wanted to ask you as well. Has this always been a talent of yours, like writing, even when you were younger? Like, did you want to be a rapper? You want to be a writer, or did you want to be a poet, or author? You know, has this always been how you got your feelings out?
Yeah. It's not anything that I wanted. Like I said, it was something that was therapeutic for myself, and for a couple of my good friends at the time, because they would read certain things. But a lot of people, you know, wanted to hear my story, my testimony. You know, a lot of people wanted to know, why are you who you are? Why do you make the decisions that you make? Why do you move the way you move? You know, why do you? The why is always there. So I said the best way for the why is to give them something to read. You know, because most people fear what they don't understand. They hate what they can't conquer. So people fear me. People have a lot of fear of me. And the fear is just the ignorance. You know, because I'm one of the most, my brother tell you, one of the most loving, giving guys. I take care of whole communities down in Richmond right now as we speak. But the fear prevents people from coming inside my circumference and actually experiencing who this individual is. So if you have fear, and we all have certain levels of fear, then here is the book. And once you see the why behind it, then hopefully you will, not just with me as an individual, have a dialogue with, but people with the same background. Let's have a dialogue, because I'm a man, I'm a human. You know, no matter the atrocities that I committed against humanity in the streets when I, for my, my years in the streets, but I'm a human, and I am a very intelligent human. So we can have a very good conversation, if you really want to. And a lot of people don't want that. They choose not to be in it takes a certain type of individuals to invite me inside their circumference. You understand what I'm saying?
We were talking about this earlier.
It takes a certain type of individuals to invite me inside their circumference. And for the ones who choose not to, the book is for you. And I wrote this book also just, I could be dead and gone today or tomorrow, just to give you the why. Let's talk about the why, not just for PERTELLE Gilmore, but for everybody, that was raised in this 70s, 80s, and 90s culture of decadence. I call it pure decadence, for real.
Like, I would be remiss if I didn't ask this, Max, because we have an upcoming dialogue on community safety happening. We are still losing young Black men in this city to gun violence and what have you. What impact do you want on that demographic? What impact do you hope comes from this book? If there's a young man that was you 50 years ago, but today, and he read this book, like, what lasting impact do you want?
To say that somebody understands, somebody actually thinks like me, or views the world like me, or went through, similar experiences, and, take the tragedies or the failures and also look at the triumphs and the things that were created, from that. And also looking at the people and the things that were put together to make this individual leave that lifestyle. I want them to know who they are. I want them to know who they are. We the same, man. We the same. I preach that we are the same mind, but we live in different cups, different bodies. We the same people. And if you, from the muck and the mire, the projects, the hood, the ghetto, whatever synonym you want to put on that, then a lot of similar experiences, because it's designed that way. I've been in ghettos. I've been in ghettos from Brooklyn, Boston, Massachusetts, Baltimore, Maryland, everywhere, and I noticed everybody is the same when it comes to, as far as the trauma, the afflictions. All you can see is different names. In Baltimore, that's his name, Johnny. Charlottesville, that's Rick or whoever. But it's you feel me? I just want them to read them. Just know that you're not alone. For a lot of my life, I thought that I was the only one like me. Until I started going and being honest and open up myself to have people like Eddie, who raised me in the street, but also was able to raise me out of the street.
That's deep. So we only have like less than a minute left technically. Okay. But did you want to share an excerpt?
No, I can if you want me to.
Oh, we want to save that for the Jefferson. Andrew said, y'all come to the Jefferson.
Too much. I'm giving up too much. Look, I feel you. I'm going to read all y'all want. Y'all need to come and check out me and Dr. Andrea Douglas at February 8th, 2025. We're going to be at the Jefferson Heritage School Center. And we're going to have book signings. We're going to be there. We're going to have a dialogue from 4 to 5:30. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your advice. I'm not going to read nothing. I'm going to read. Come to the event, and I'm going to read all you want, all the questions. We're going to get it in.
Spot on. Thank you, my brother.
Yeah. I want to thank you, Pertelle and Andrea, for sharing your time with us today. We've had a wonderful conversation, but we've just scratched the surface of it. All the issues that we've talked about are just death to Black people in our Black communities. That's what makes it so hard for me to have this conversation. But we've talked about self-development with the structure and accountability. We've talked about taking care of one another with our peers, and we've talked about leaving something behind to show people the way.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all.
And gotta have you back, brother. Love these conversations.
Anytime. This what I live for. I live for the dialogue, man.
Got you.
Yeah.
Thank y'all.
All right. Thank you, family. Until next time.
Way before time, rough life with a knife as his fight. Cried because he died of frightening death when he left his very last breath. Without left, so watch your step. Back in the 60s, our brothers and sisters were hanged. How could you gangbang? I never ever ran from the Ku Klux Klan, and I shouldn't have to run from a black man, cause that's
Funky fresh dressed to impress, ready to party. Money in your pocket, dying to move your body. To get inside, to pay the whole $10. Scotch tape with a razor blade, tape to your collar. Leave the guns in the crack and the knobs alone. MC lights on the microphone, bum rushing and pushing, snatching and taxing. I crammed understand why brothers don't be maxing. There's only one disco, they'll close one more. You ain't guarding the door, so what you got a gun for? Do you rob the rich and give to the poor? Yo, daddy-o.
Straight from the mouth of why daddy-o. Do a crime, end up in jail, you gotta go. Cause you could do crime and get paid today, and tomorrow you're behind bars in the worst way. Far from your family, cause you're locked away.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.